India and the world. The Prime Minister's visit to the G20, lots to look forward to. Also looking at other actions there from the field of politics, business, sports and entertainment in the next 1 hour. Let's get started. I'm Anil Thomas with the first story there on the Prime Minister's visit to Rome today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Rome in Italy to attend the 16th G20 summit, also to hold a meeting with Italian counterpart Mario Draghi to participate in dialogue on pandemic, sustainable development, global economy and health governance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds meeting with the President of the European Council Charles Michel and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen. Prime Minister Modi to also attend the World Leaders Summit of COP26 in Glasgow. COP26 will explore the possibilities for further accelerating clean growth. India to push for timely implementation of the Paris Agreement guidelines to limit the global temperature rise. Home Minister Amit Shah visits Lucknow. Uttar Pradesh launches BJP's membership drive Mera Paripar Bhajpa Parivar at Lucknow. Says BJP government in UP work for poor and marginalized sections of society. India's cumulative vaccination coverage crosses 105 crores. 14,348 new cases in the last 24 hours. Recovery rate currently at 98.19%. Centre to procure 30 crore COVID vaccine doses in the month of November. Aims to administer 12 crore doses during Har Ghar Dastak Maha campaign. Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya launches nationwide expansion of Pneumococcal Conjugate Vaccine as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to reduce the cases of pneumonia among infants. Health Minister says children from poor family to benefit from this campaign. Threat of pandemic still persists at global level. Russia battles record COVID deaths and infections. Partial lockdown put in place in Moscow. South Korea says to implement its first vaccine passport for high-risk venues such as gyms, saunas and bars. WHO appeals to 20 country leaders to fund a $23.4 billion plan in its fight against COVID-19 pandemic in poorer countries. In the T20 World Cup, in today's match, West Indies will be up against Bangladesh, while in the second match, Pakistan will face Afghanistan. Well, let's begin Midday Prime with the big news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a meeting with the President of the European Council Charles Michel and President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen. Earlier, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Rome to a warm welcome in the Eternal City. He was received by senior officials of the government of Italy and the Ambassador of India in Italy. Prime Minister is visiting Rome and the Vatican City at the invitation of Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi, following which he will travel to Glasgow in United Kingdom from the 1st to the 2nd of November at the invitation of United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Prime Minister will also attend the G20 summit in Italy. Well, for more on this story, we've got our correspondent Amrit Pal standing by to give us the latest. Amrit, good afternoon. Welcome to Midday Prime. Amrit, purely looking at the G20 summit, the first stopover that the Prime Minister has in Rome, the significance of it and what's on the agenda?
Of the G20, but Anil, let me tell you, as you just broke, that the Prime Minister met with the President of the European Council This meeting was the first bilateral after Prime Minister arrived here in Rome. The Prime Minister arrived early morning according to Rome time, and that was the first bilateral that he held with the European Council and the European Commission. Primarily issues of climate change, issues of trade barriers were discussed between the two sides. As you know, climate change is in sharp focus, and also, as you said, the Prime Minister, after participating in the G20 summit, will be going down for COP26 in Glasgow, in the United Kingdom, where again climate change would be the key focus of that meeting. In fact, even at G20, it is the key. The climate change is in sharp focus, and that was essentially what was discussed in the first bilateral between Prime Minister and the President of the European Commission and the European Council. So, climate change, how to achieve the targets that countries wish to set for themselves, how to have a united global approach in arresting climate change is going to dominate the G20 conference. The G20 as a grouping has been seen wanting on the issue of climate change because countries, one, do not wish to commit. When they commit, they do not honor their commitments, and then there are divergences between countries. The Prime Minister during his intervention is expected, Anil, to push for a greater a roadmap, an achievable and a realistic roadmap for arresting climate change, and stressing upon the need of various countries honoring their commitment. One, secondly, he's going to make a strong pitch for climate finance and developing a strategy to deal with technology transfer from the developed world to the developing world and the least developed countries. So this is going to dominate when he meets the G20 leaders tomorrow and day after for the G20 summit, apart from, of course, sustainable development and the COVID pandemic.
Amrit, considering the fact that he's met the President of the European Commission and also the President of the European Council, they're both the leaders, and Europe in a very large way, the continent on a very large scale has has been hit by the pandemic in a very severe way. This particular G20 is going to be more on deliberations on how to bounce back in the post-COVID scenario. Looking at that, what could be the Prime Minister's pitch here when he met those two leaders from the European Council and Commission?
The Prime Minister would have conveyed, though we are still waiting for the official statement on what really transpired in the meeting, but one understands that the three leaders, when they met this morning, would have talked about greater linkages between Europe and India in terms of preparing a health infrastructure in place to recover from the COVID pandemic. In fact, when the Prime Minister goes to G20 tomorrow, he would be, in fact, pitching for creating an infrastructure which could have for various forms in terms of interlinkages between countries, transfer of technology, as India has effectively used technology and wishes to share its experience, the way India has been able to vaccinate 1 billion people of its population. So India could share its experiences with the other countries and give technology platforms like CoWIN, the portal for successful and effective implementation and testing and tracking of the COVID patients. Also, the Prime Minister would essentially be talking about how to put a roadmap in place or a bulwark in place against any future pandemics, so that the sort of economic distress that the world saw because of COVID, that sort of a disruption doesn't come in.
Okay. Also looking at the fact that, is there a pitch that India is going to make, especially, the Prime Minister is time and again spoke about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. Somewhere the Prime Minister is going to make a serious pitch, especially when it comes to, strengthening the global health governance.
Absolutely. The Prime Minister is expected to make a strong pitch for a united or a collective effort in dealing with the pandemic, both in terms of, in terms of economic recovery. Because apart from the number of people who were affected or are affected, because the virus is still not gone away, that's one part of it, the health recovery. Second is the economic recovery. So the Prime Minister would stress upon the need for everybody to put their divergences aside, build a certain consensus, look at mutual certification, vaccination certification, recognitions and things like that, so that, travel, business, students, movement of people can open up, because that that will give a boost to the economy. So the Prime Minister is expected to press upon the world leaders at G20 that now is the time to come together and work towards that. Apart from that, India on its part would also reiterate ready once again to mass-produce vaccines and supply it to the countries, especially those who need it the most and do not have equitable distribution at the moment. India, if you remember, was manufacturing and supplying vaccines to many countries, but after the second wave they were hit, there were a lot of cases in India, so our own people had to be vaccinated first, but India is now ready. Once it's achieved the 1 billion milestone, it does feel confident enough to increasingly step up the vaccination for its own population, but not just its own population, but the population of the world. So that's what the Prime Minister is expected to put in place, to put out at the G20, saying that India is ready to take its fair share of the global responsibility, and the rest of the world also needs to do that if this pandemic and its after effects of economic distress, of course the health distress, have to be overcome and overcome fast. Anil?
Amrit, one quick word before I let you know. Considering the fact that G20 consists of the world's top 20 economies, it's got roughly around 60% of the world population, 75% of the world trade. The significance that G20 has, especially, looking at the present situation or the present chaos that the world is trying to overcome. The role that G20 has, especially in giving some kind of leverage or some kind of, blueprint for the way ahead.
Anil, G20 is a very powerful forum. As you rightly said, that it's the 20 biggest economies of the world, 19 countries, and then the European Union. So it is, it controls about 80% of the world's economy, 75% of the GDP, 60% of the covers 60% of the world population. So it has a lot of heft. But the G20's problem since its inception has been the divergences within G20, because it's not just the developed economies. Of course, there's the P5, but there are developing economies who are part of it. Now, there are internal divergences even within the Western nations and the developed nations. There are divergences, say, within the P5. China and Russia have a different stand. The others have a different stand. So it is these divergences is what G20 is not able to arrive at consensus on many important issues, even like putting up a united fight for the COVID-19 pandemic. And at this summit, this is precisely what is going to be stressed upon, to put a collective fight, a united front, put your differences and divergences away and now get together, because the need of the hour is to collectively deal with the distress, both the health distress and the economic distress that the world is undergoing on account of the pandemic.
Okay, Amrit, I'll ask you to hold your thoughts. The Prime Minister has tweeted, let's take a look at that tweet and then come back to you. The Prime Minister has tweeted that the official engagement in Rome begins with a productive interaction with the President of the European Union, Charles Michel, and Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the EU Commission there. The President of the EU Commission and the President of the European Council meeting the Prime Minister, the first engagement of the day, and the Prime Minister tweeting about it. The leaders discussed ways to enhance economic as well as people-to-people linkages aimed at creating a better planet. Amrit, considering the fact that, when one looks at the G20, the way it began way back in 1999 to the present day order, how would you look at the journey of G20 and India's role in G20 purely in terms of, India would be in 2022 holding on to the presidency of G20. So how would you look at India's role and India's journey in G20 on a whole?
Anil, India has been a founding member of the G20 and India has played quite a crucial role in shaping various policies of G20. In fact, the proposals in the past that India has put out, say, on black money, on political issues, even, for example, this time around Afghanistan would be one of the key focuses when leaders meet, and the situation in Afghanistan and how the world should react to it. So India being a leading economy, developing economy of the world and a growth engine has a very important say, and what the Indian leaders speak there does cut a lot of ice and carries weight with it. So India's effective involvement in G20 has been very important and significant. But as I was saying, that the problem with G20 is that the divergences as a grouping are so many. That's the critics of G20 say that's what holds G20 back. It was formed essentially as an economic grouping with increasingly political decisions or political stances put countries away from each other, and therefore consensus is often not reached at G20. But India's role in G20 as a founding member, Prime Minister, is since 2014. This is the 8th G20 that he's participating in. So India has effectively, with the population that it has, with the role it plays in world affairs and the voice it carries, is an important voice at the G20 forum. Anil?
Okay, we'll leave it there. You've got a busy day ahead. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this afternoon on Midday Prime. Take good care of yourself. We'll come back to you across the day for more updates. Well, staying with the Prime Minister, in the first leg of his visit to Italy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will take part in the 16th G20 summit, the most powerful grouping of the world, covering 80% of the global GDP, 60% of the world population. India is a founding member of the G20 organization and has always raised the issues pertaining to the developed countries. Prime Minister is likely to highlight issues ranging from global health governance to issues of tax evasion to climate change. Here's more.
As leaders of the 20 biggest economies of the world gather here in Rome over the weekend for the 16th G20 summit, they will be primarily focusing on achieving global health and economic recovery, sustainable development and climate change. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during his interventions at the G20 sessions, will stress upon setting realistic and achievable targets and countries then honoring their commitments. He could also appeal to the developed world to reduce their divergences with the developing world and look at climate financing and put in a model for achieving transfer of technology and climate financing, especially to the developing and the least developed countries.
In the first leg of his visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the G20 summit in Rome, Italy from 30 to 31st of October at the invitation of the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. The summit will be attended by leaders of G20 countries, the European Union and other invited countries and representatives of international organizations. This time, the focus is going to be on economic recovery after the corona pandemic.
Italy's theme for its presidency is People, Planet, Prosperity. It actually comes from the 2030 UN Agenda for Sustainable Development. There are 5 Ps here, but Italy has chosen to retain the 3 Ps as being the theme for the G20 summit. And the focus of Italy is on recovery from the pandemic and strengthening global health governance, economic recovery and resilience, climate change and energy transition, and sustainable development and food security.
This will be the 8th G20 summit meeting of Prime Minister Modi as Prime Minister. Before that, Prime Minister Modi has represented India in this conference 7 times. India is a founding member of the G20 organization and has always raised the issues pertaining to the developing countries. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla added that India has been a party to reforms in global institutions from global governance. Referring to the efforts made by India at the time of Corona, the Foreign Secretary said that India will put issues like global health governance on the G20 platform.
The thrust of the upcoming summit will be on economic and health recovery, climate change and sustainable development. We are now close to the second year of our dealing with the pandemic. Obviously, the devastation it has caused cannot be overstated. It is therefore not surprising that the Italian presidency has kept its focus on recovery and, of course, economic and health recovery both. They have already set the stage for an ambitious agenda on global health governance with a parallel focus on recovery from the ongoing crisis and preparing for the future health crises that may emerge.
The Foreign Secretary said there will be inclusive talks on many pertinent issues including tax evasion and climate change. India will also call for consensus among the countries on the basis of approval of the authenticity of the vaccine so that people do not face inconvenience in international travel.
There is unanimity in the G20 on building back from the pandemic by focusing on job creation, skill development, and I think this is an important part of the overall discussions and the agenda that will be there. Women's empowerment, increased participation in women's workforce, also for international travel. I think that is an important point. Resumption of international travel through mutual recognition of national vaccine documents. This has been our proposal, and there is strong support within emerging market economies in the group in this regard.
Prime Minister Modi will also hold bilateral meetings with the heads of many countries during his visit to Italy and Glasgow. The G20 organization represents 80% of the world's global GDP, 75% of global trade and 60% of the world's population.
This year's theme, People, Planet and Prosperity, primarily means health recovery as far as people goes, prosperity, economic recovery and planet, climate change. Amritpal Singh, DD India, Italy.
Prime Minister will travel to Glasgow to attend the World Leaders Summit of the 26th Conference of Parties, or COP26, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change at the invitation of Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson. COP26 has been held from the 31st of October to the 12th of November this year under the presidency of UK partnering with Italy. The high-level segment of COP26 titles the World Leaders Summit will be held on the 1st and 2nd of November. The summit will be attended by heads of state, government of more than 120 countries. COP26 was originally slated to be held in 2020 but was deferred to 2021 in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. But for more on the story, we've got our correspondent Tapash joining us. Tapash, good afternoon. Purely in terms of financing, especially when it comes to climate financing, that particular issue seems to be resolved before the COP26 beginning. Does that augur well for all the participating countries?
Well, Anil, let's just put it this way, that it has been announced but has not been yet put in practice, and that is where the problem lies. It has been seen over the years, in fact, since Paris Agreement, that the efforts, the promises that have been made so far has not really been put into practice by the developed countries. The first and foremost was the technology transfer. That was supposed to happen, and since Paris Agreement till now, not much can be written about the technology transfer. The second and the most important part, as you rightly pointed out, was about $100 billion providing to the developing countries and the least developing countries to augment their industries in a manner that will benefit the environment. Again, since if you take a close look, if the UN report is to go by, you realize the fact that even then developed countries failed by quite a margin. It's just to take a look at United States, European countries. They have have not been able to, live up to their promises of providing 100 billion. And now the situation is such that 100 billion may not prove to be enough. And one has to again recalculate the money that needs to be put into in place in order to save the planet. And that is where much of the hullabaloo that is going on. Yes, before the start of the summit, it has been decided that $100 billion will be done. It will be provided, but how? What will be the mechanism that still needs to be looked into? And that is where the problem lies. If you take a close look at the COP26, before that other COP, the Conference of Parties summit, you realize that in each and every COP, the goalposts tend to shift, and when it comes to understanding and trying to put into perspective the work that has been done, the developed countries has not been able to match up to the words or the scale of the work that they say that they are going to undertake, and that is where the problem lies. The historical problem that historically they are the main polluters, and if you take a close look at the most polluted emitter in the world, the United States and European Union comes at the top. And it is their responsibility to lead from the front and reduce their carbon emission. They are talking about the net neutrality. They're talking about other aspects, but it is important that whatever they talk, they put into practice, and that is where major issues are creeping up.
Okay, since you mentioned they are in the they generally tend to shift their goalpost from COP to COP. How would you look at India's position in this COP? What could be India's focus, especially when the world leaders deliberate on a serious issue like climate?
Well, India has made its position quite clear that in fact it is one of the very few G20 countries which has managed to provide a main impetus in terms of climate change, and its role. If you take a close look at the international report, it has always said that India has done remarkably well. In fact, just to put into perspective, India is one of the fourth, stands fourth in terms of the renewable energy capacity. It also stands fourth in terms of the wind installed capacity, and also fifth in terms of the solar installed capacity. It is one of it started the International Solar Alliance, and it has started what you call a movement to shift out from the renewable towards the renewable sources of energy.
Okay.
But again, one has to see that India's industry is still based on coal-based technology, and it will take some time to shift the entire industry to renewable or other modes of energy. And that is where the technology transfer. That is where historically the way the West has done the pollution. They now need to come up and say that these are the technology that you need to use. These are the money that will be used. There is another aspect that a lot of people are not talking about, and it is, as I said, the polluters.
The larger point is understood, Tapas, when you're trying to say,
and that is where one has to have to look at the perspective. If India ask for the amount that it has been, the Western countries has managed to pollute the environment, it will lead to a lot of issues. So in many ways, what one can say is that so far, India's stand is very clear. The developed countries need to walk the talk rather than shift the goalposts, and if they do that, most of the issues will be resolved. But
that's the point that one needs to consider, especially when it comes to India holding the point, when it comes to walking the talk, and also pushing the other developed nations in the world to walk the talk, because that's going to be very crucial in this climate discussion, where there is a now or never moment as the world looks at this particular COP26 with a declaration that can make not only the world leaders but also protesters there out on the street something to cheer on this particular development. Thank you and appreciate you joining us. Let's now move on to our developing story. Union Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah launched BJP's membership drive Mera Parivar, Bhajpa Parivar at the Defence Expo ground in Lucknow. Hitting out at the opposition, former government led by BSP or Samajwadi Party did little for the development of the state. Amit Shah said that the BJP-led government tightened the noose against criminals in the state.
उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर कई साल तक ये सपा बसपा सपा का खेल चलता रहा और उसने उत्तर प्रदेश को बर्बाद करके रख दिया। उत्तर प्रदेश और की कानून और व्यवस्था की स्थिति कैसी थी, मेरा तो खून खौल जाता था। पश्चिमी उत्तर प्रदेश से कैराना से पलायन शुरू हुआ था। यहां लखनऊ के हुक्मरानों का नींद नहीं उड़ता था। आज मैं कहने आया हूं, उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर किसी की हिम्मत नहीं है पलायन करने की। पलायन कराने वालों का पलायन हो चुका है। हर जिले में दो तीन बाहुबली थे। दूरबीन लेकर मैं ढूंढता हूं, कहीं पर बाहुबली दिखाई नहीं पड़ता है भाई, कहे पर।
Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath said that the membership drive target will be achieved within the deadline.
हम लोग अगले एक सप्ताह के अंदर दीपावली के भव्य आयोजन के साथ जुड़ेंगे। इससे पहले प्रत्येक उस परिवार को जो मेरा परिवार भाजपा परिवार इस लक्ष्य के साथ जुड़ना चाहता है, उन्हें जोड़ने के लिए आज हम सब यहां पर माननीय गृह मंत्री जी के नेतृत्व और मार्गदर्शन में एकत्र हुए हैं। हम विश्वास के साथ कह सकते हैं, जो लक्ष्य संगठन ने तय किया है, उस लक्ष्य को प्राप्त करने के लिए आप सभी पदाधिकारी और कार्यकर्ता माननीय गृह मंत्री जी के मार्गदर्शन में प्राण से जुट करके एक समय सीमा के अंदर हर परिवार को भाजपा परिवार के साथ जोड़ने के लिए कार्य करेंगे।
Well, moving on to our national prime segment. Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya launched the nationwide expansion of the Pneumococcal Conjugate Vaccine as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to reduce the cases of pneumonia among infants. Vaccine will help reduce the mortality rate amongst infants due to pneumonia. Pneumonia accounts for nearly 60% of the children's deaths. The vaccine will now protect the children from deaths caused by pneumonia. The health minister said that children are the future of the country and children from poor families will now be able to get this vaccine.
देश के सभी बच्चों को समयसर वैक्सीन मिले, उसके लिए कई अभियान भी चलाए और उसमें ये न्यूमोकोकल वैक्सीन न्यूमोनिया के लिए है। देश में कुल मिला के 16% बच्चों का डेथ, 16% बच्चों का डेथ ये न्यूमोनिया से होता है। ये तो बहुत बड़ा नेशनल लॉस है। ये न्यूमोनिया के सामने ये सबसे बड़ा अभियान के तौर पे चलेगा और बच्चों का जीवन बचाने में ये पीसीवी वैक्सीन का एक महत्वपूर्ण रोल रहेगा।
Let's now take an update on COVID-19 situation from across the country. The recovery of 13,198 patients in the last 24 hours has increased the cumulative tally of recovered patients to 3,36,27,632. Consequently, India's recovery rate currently stands at 98.19%. Sustained and collaborative efforts by the centre and the states along with union territories continue the trend of less than 50,000 daily new cases that's being reported. 14,348 new cases reported in the last 24 hours. The active cases account for less than 1% of the total cases and currently stand at 0.47%, which is the lowest since March 2020. India's active caseload currently stands at 1,61,334. The weekly positivity rate currently stands at 1.18%, which is less than 2% for the last 35 days. Daily positivity rate currently stands at 1.12%, which is less than 2% for the last 25 days. Also, 60 crore 58 lakh vaccine doses or tests being done for COVID-19 across the country. Well, moving from test to vaccination, India has achieved another landmark, 105 crore vaccination done. Union Minister of Health and Family Welfare, Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya, in a tweet said that 105 crore vaccines of history. Congratulations to the people of India. COVID-19 vaccination drive achieves new eclots. Meanwhile, in a major boost to COVID vaccination campaign, Centre will procure 30 crore COVID vaccine doses in the month of November. Government will get 6 crore Covaxin, 22 crore of Covishield and 2 crore Zyco vaccine. Har Ghar Dastak Maha campaign will be conducted from the 2nd of November to the 2nd of December. Under this, 12 crore doses will be administered as part of the Har Ghar Dastak drive. Healthcare workers will conduct door-to-door vaccination of people eligible for second dose as well as those who are yet to administer their first jab as a shield against the virus. Union Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandaviya today flagged off the 11 trucks loaded with relief material for Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. Out of these, 4 trucks have left for Dehradun, while 1 each for Jammu and Srinagar and 3 for Ladakh. The relief materials is an initiative of the Red Cross Society in a bid to provide aid to people in the state where heavy rainfall has caused massive destruction recently.
इसमें ब्लैंकेट है, किचन के लिए ज़रूरी सामान है, मेडिसिन है, तत्काल आपदाग्रस्त विस्तार में लोगों को रहने के लिए टेंट भी है। ये सब चीज़ अगले दिन में उत्तराखंड, श्रीनगर, जम्मू वगैरह लोकेशन पर पहुंच जाएंगे। वहाँ से जनता को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया जाएगा और आपदा की स्थिति में लोगों को सहयोग किया जाएगा।
Well, moving on, the Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology and Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences today signed an MOU with UNESCO's Mahatma Gandhi Institute. The Mahatma Gandhi Institute will provide online courses for emotional and mental well-being for the staff and students of Kalinga Institutes. Dr. Chut Samantha, the founder of Kalinga Institute, and Dr. Ananta Duriyappa, who is the director of UNESCO, signed the MOU. Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting, Dr. L. Murugan, arrived at Kochi Airport en route to Lakshadweep. The minister is on a 3-day visit to Lakshadweep, where he will attend various programs and review developmental activities. On Sunday, he will participate in the National Unity Day and Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav at Agati. Time now on Midday Prime to get you the latest updates from the world of business. Well, I've got my colleague Tanvi standing by. Tanvi, is it another round of bear hug that you're seeing on the markets, or do the bulls have some kind of breathing space?
Bear hug again, but we'll come to the stock markets later in Business Prime. Anil, for now, let's tell you about the G20 Joint Finance and Health Ministers meeting. Well, Finance and Corporate Affairs Minister Nirmala Sitharaman arrived in Rome today to participate in the G20 Joint Finance and Health Ministers meeting in Rome. She was received by Ambassador Dr. Nina Malhotra. Finance and Health Ministers of the G20 nations have gathered in Rome for their first joint meeting under the Italian G20 presidency. Finance and Health Ministers will discuss how to keep momentum on response to COVID-19 pandemic and build on further coordination arrangements between health and finance ministers of the G20 nations later today. The meeting will be co-chaired by Daniel Franco, Italian Minister of Economy, and
Finance Minister Roberto Speranza is Italian Minister of Health. The meeting is being held on the eve of G20 Leaders Summit taking place in Rome on October 31st, 2021. The Union Government on Friday extended the tenure of Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikant Das by 3 years with effect from 10th December 2021. An official statement said that the Appointments Committee of the Cabinet has approved the reappointment of Shaktikant Das as Governor, Reserve Bank of India for a period of 3 years beyond 10th December 2021 or until further orders, whichever is earlier. Shaktikant Das has been appointed RBI Governor in December 2018 for 3 years, replacing the then RBI Governor Urjit Patel. He was previously the Economic Affairs Secretary in the Finance Ministry. Moving on, as India has crossed the milestone of administering 100 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines, it is 100 crore vaccines. It is leveraging its membership of multilateral financing institutions to boost the immunization rate of the country's eligible population. Beijing-based Multilateral Development Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and the Asian Development will co-finance a $2 billion loan for India to procure COVID-19 vaccines under ADB's Asia-Pacific Vaccine Access Facility. About 667 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines were expected to be procured through the loan. AIIB's Vice President Dr. DJ Pandian said that the vaccines will be purchased by the Government of India through a competitive process and the ADB will be administering the purchasing system and implement it under ADB's APVAX or Asia-Pacific Vaccine Access Facility mechanism. Besides funding various infra projects in India, the AIIB has also granted $1.75 billion to India for the COVID-19 relief budget support. The Ministry of Railways on Friday said that it has decided to withdraw the decision on Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation (IRCTC) convenience fee. This comes a day after IRCTC said that it has been asked to share 50% of its revenue earned as convenience fee from bookings on its website. Secretary, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, Deepam Tuhinkanta Pandey, informed on Twitter that the Ministry of Railways has decided to withdraw the decision on IRCTC convenience fee. Convenience fees is charged from customers and generates a sizable revenue for both the IRCTC and the railways. The fee is not part of the rail fare. It is for the service of online ticket booking offered by the IRCTC. Reacting to the news, the IRCTC shares had fallen around 25% in the morning session, but reversal of government's decision led to a short covering in the counter. And next, let's talk about the stock markets. Well, after yesterday's big fall, the domestic stock markets have again ruled mostly weak so far on Friday. So the Sensex at the BSE had slumped 681 points or 1.1% to 59,303 in afternoon deals a short while ago. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange had dropped 177 points or 1% to 17,681. In the broader market, while the BSE Mid-Cap Index had gained 0.4%, the small cap index had declined 0.4%. The top index losers so far today on the BSE are Kotak Mahindra, IndusInd Bank, HDFC and Reliance with losses of between 1.8 and 2.4%. The top index gainers are Maruti Suzuki, Ultratech Cement, Shree Cements and Tata Steel with gains of between 1.8 and 2.1%. Moving on, other key Asian markets have been mixed on Friday as Amazon and Apple quarterly earnings bucked a recent strong trend and growth and inflation fears continue to weigh on the markets. Investors are also worried about varied responses by the central banks worldwide to rising inflation. So MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan was down 0.3% and was on track for a weekly loss of 1.3%. Japan's Nikkei 225 index had gained 0.3%. And China's Shanghai Composite Index had added 0.8%. But Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index had lost 0.9% and South Korea's Kospi Index had slipped 1.3%. Back home at the interbank forex market, the rupee had appreciated 15 paise against the dollar in opening trade on Friday on expectation of inflows into the domestic initial public offerings. Later in afternoon deals, the rupee was up 6 paise at 74 rupees 86 paise against the dollar. At the multi-commodity exchange, both gold and silver are, however, trading lower in afternoon deals. Gold had depreciated 103 rupees at 47,858 rupees per 10 grams. Silver had declined 431 rupees at 64,500 rupees per kilo. And very quickly, let's tell you how the global energy market is doing today. Global crude oil prices edged up on Friday, but were headed for their first weekly losses in at least 8 weeks after US oil stocks rose more than expected and Iran flagged that it was resuming talks with the Western powers, which could lead to an end to sanctions. So Brent crude oil rose 19 cents to $84.51 a barrel. US crude was up 2 cents to $82.83 a barrel. Both Brent and US crude were on track to fall about 1% for the week, the first weekly drop in 10 weeks for US crude and the first in 8 weeks for Brent. Some analysts said that the rally has likely neared its peak and prices, while remaining elevated, will soften in the near term. So, Anil, we hope that the global crude oil prices soften in the near term because its impact will be all over the world. Back to you.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this afternoon on Midday Prime, giving us the stories from the world of business. Well, time now to shift focus and take a look at stories making news across the globe. We're starting first up with neighbours Bangladesh. The country's High Court has ordered a judicial probe into the recent incidents of communal violence that claimed the lives of 6 locals during the Durga Puja festival last month. In its order, the court has asked the judicial magistrate of Rangpur, Kumila, Chattogram, Feni, Chandpur and Naukhali to probe the incidents of communal violence and submit the report within 60 days. The High Court also asked the concerned authorities to explain as to why it shall not declare as illegal the inaction of local administration to ensure security of the victims. Well, the cleanup campaign began today in Australian state capitals of Melbourne and Adelaide, with severe storms ripping through properties and uprooting trees. During the storm on Thursday, one property in Melbourne had the roof come down into the bedroom with debris strewn over the yard. The Victorian State Emergency Service said it was responding to hundreds of calls for help as a severe weather warning remains in place for parts of Victoria. South Korea, meanwhile, said on Friday it will drop all operating curbs on restaurants and cafes and implement the first vaccine passport for high-risk venues such as gyms, saunas and bars as it tries to live with COVID-19. The first phase will go into effect on Monday, November 1st and will last for a month, with plans calling for all restrictions to be scrapped by February. While private gatherings will be allowed up to 10 people in Greater Seoul and 12 people in other regions regardless of vaccination status, but restaurants and cafes will keep a cap up to 4 unvaccinated people per group. The visits to high-risk venues such as bars and nightclubs, indoor gyms, saunas and karaoke bars will require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test results within 48 hours. The World Health Organization (WHO) has appealed to leaders of the 20 biggest economies, the G20 leaders, to fund a $23.4 billion plan as its fight against COVID-19 in poorer countries. Tedros Ghebreyesus said that the G20 should fully fund the latest round of programs, which aims to provide vaccines, drugs and tests to the poorest countries until September 2022, expected to include the use of an experimental oral antiviral pill made by Merck and Company and will treat mild and moderate cases. The WHO's call has come ahead of the meeting of the group of 20 leaders in Italy's Rome. With a recent massive surge in the coronavirus infections in Russia, shops, restaurants and schools have shut down in Moscow in a partial lockdown as Russia battles record COVID-19 deaths and infections. Only essential shops like supermarkets and pharmacies are allowed to open in the capital, while food outlets are only providing takeaways. Authorities have also given workers across Russia 9 days off from Saturday in a bid to curb infections. Russia has reported a record 1,159 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The official data also reveals 40,096 infections in 85 regions of Russia. The latest major lockdown was in May-June of 2020 in Russia. The overall COVID-19 death toll due to the pandemic officially now more than 230,000, the highest in the continent and one of the highest in the world too. Well, time now to get you the latest from the world of sports. Well, I've got Deepika standing by. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Anil. Let's quickly take a look at all what is happening in the world of sports. And starting with cricket, Australia defeated Sri Lanka by 7 wickets in Group 1 Super 12 match of the ongoing ICC T20 World Cup in Dubai on Thursday. Kusal Perera and Charita Solanka scored 35 each, while Bhanuka Rajapaksa provided the big hit towards the end of the innings, remaining unbeaten on 33 of 26 balls as Sri Lanka made 154 for 6. Australia chased down the target in 17 overs, while opener David Warner smashed 65 of 42 balls. And 2 matches will be played in the T20 World Cup today. Bangladesh and West Indies are set to cross swords today at the Sharjah Cricket Stadium. The Caribbean team, led by Kiran Pollard, have had a disastrous campaign thus far, having lost both their games against England and South Africa. The Tigers are also yet to open their account after back-to-back losses at the hands of England and Sri Lanka. On Wednesday, 27th of October, England beat them by 8 wickets. And the second match of the day, Pakistan will look to move closer to a semi-final spot when it takes on Afghanistan in a Group 2 Super 12 clash today. Babar Azam's men will start favourites against Mohammad Nami's Afghanistan, which began its campaign with a 130-run win over Scotland. Mujib-ur-Rahman, with his variety of off-breaks, kuklis and carom balls, finished with 5 for 20. Such was its dominance that by the time Rashid Khan, the number 3 ranked T20I bowler in the world, came on to bowl, Afghanistan was already on course for a big win. And 28 years old Hardik Pandya has resumed bowling in practice sessions ahead of India versus New Zealand match in the ongoing T20 Cricket World Cup. Pandya did not bowl in the entire Australia tour in 2021 and in the second leg of IPL 2021. In the T20 Cricket World Cup opening match of India against Pakistan as well, Hardik Pandya struggled to 11 off 8 balls and further sustained a shoulder injury. As soon as ICC posted a video of Hardik Pandya back in the net, it now seems that Pandya is moving a step closer to returning to bowling duties at the ICC Men's T20 World Cup after rolling his arm over in the nets ahead of the team's next game against New Zealand. And in badminton, India's ace shuttler PV Sindhu defeated Danish player Leyen Christophersen in straight sets to advance into the third round of the women's singles event at the French Open Super 750 tournament on Thursday. And meanwhile, young and rising star Lakshya Sen also advanced to the men's single quarterfinals with a straight game victory over Singapore's Loh Keen Yew, but Samir Verma retired midway due to an injury at the French Open 2021. And in tennis, Germany's Alexander Zverev booked his spot in the Vienna Open quarterfinals on Thursday following a hard-fought win over Australian Alex de Minaur in 3 sets. The second seed backed a 6-2, 3-6, 6-2 triumph to set up a match against 6th-seeded Canadian Felix Auger-Aliassime, who saved 3 match points en route to ousting recent Indian Wells champion Cameron Norrie of Great Britain by 2-6, 7-6 and 6-4. And Francis Tiafoe came from a set down to stun Greek top seed Stefanos Tsitsipas in the Bank Open second round on Thursday in Vienna. The American overturned a 3-0 deficit in the deciding set before booking his spot into the quarterfinals with a thrilling 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 victory. The 23-year-old will next meet 8th seed Thiago Schwartzman for a place in the semis after the Argentine earlier saw off French Michel Monfils 7-6, 4-6 and 6-2. Well, that's all for now in the world of sports. Over to you, Anil.
Well, thank you for that quick update from the world of sports. Well, time now to shift focus and take a look at our next segment, Live Prime. Well, Germany's zoo presented a tiny newborn poodoo, the latest addition to the deer family in their zoo. Poodoos are about half the size of deer native to Germany. The forest animals are mostly active at night and like to eat leaves, fruits, flowers and young tree shoots. Newborn Dulce was born 6 weeks ago into a family of southern poodoos at the zoo. The zookeepers are yet to determine the new arrival's gender and will leave the young family in peace for a while. Staying with zoos but shifting continents to Cuba, where the National Zoo has seen a baby boom of several exotic and endangered species fueled by the quarantine quite during the pandemic. Zookeepers said they have seen an uptake in romantic encounters that resulted in a bumper crop of baby animals not seen in recent years. The newborns include leopards, Bengal tigers, zebras, giraffes, antelopes and oxen, a rarity officials attribute to the many months the zoo was closed due to the pandemic. While passing famous landmarks in stunned Glaswegians, German artist Arne Rosell rolled his way into Glasgow Tuesday caged in a giant spear aimed at raising awareness to what the individual can do to tackle climate change. Rosell was completing a 3-month journey from his hometown in Paderborn to the COP26 host city that took him through 7 countries and more than 60 cities. Along the way, he encouraged individuals to make specific promises to tackle climate change. Rosell said his own promise was to offset all the personal carbon emissions. Well, an interesting view to address a serious issue like climate change, where he's crossed 7 countries and several cities there in his journey to make it count in the fight against climate change at COP26 in Glasgow. Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of news. It's me signing off from my entire team. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Take care.